Check podcasts.
The Bread and Butter Collective is a collection of hospitality professionals working together to help strengthen our industry to build strong culture, community, and sustainability.
I'm Calen McNeil.
And I'm Sam Jones. And this is the Bread and Butter Podcast.
Sam, how are you?
Calen, how good am I? I'm so good. Thanks
good?
for asking. Yep.
So you're good. I'm good. But what you know what's not good?
The delivery system for food in Victoria right now.
Well, one company in particular that's failed us completely, and this is one of the reasons we want to bring on this special podcast just to talk a little bit about Tutti. It'll be a short one, but it's an important one.
It's a terrible thing.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, did you use Tutti?
I didn't, and I wanted to, since we're going to talk about it, I wanted to say something about that because when they first came on the scene, I looked at them. They were local.
For those that don't know, Tutti is a food delivery service, much like DoorDash and Skip the Dishes and whatnot.
That's right.
But local to Victoria,
and it felt like we should all be doing that.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I didn't. I think maybe my first initial calls and contacts weren't as smooth as I thought they should be.
Yeah.
Maybe. And so I didn't do it. And I felt kind of guilty about not doing it because I'm not supporting a local company by not doing it. And I struggled with that. And I'm not saying that I see any vindication because it's not like that at all. However, I'm happy I trusted my intuition back then, and I feel so terrible for the company. I feel bad for Tutti because they don't want to screw people over. They don't want to not pay their suppliers. No. I don't think so. I don't want to think so. They're caught, but. So I feel bad for them because they're in the position where they owe a lot of people a lot of money and that they probably didn't do it on purpose, I bet. However, due to whatever reason, they do owe a lot of local businesses a lot of money.
Well, some of them will not survive.
That is just awful.
I mean, if the reports of JJ Wonton Noodle House being owed $200,000,
is that what it was? Oh my God,
that's unrecoverable.
It is.
Like you cannot recover your business, especially in the restaurant business where the margins are so small. And there's an institution. I think that they've been around about 30 years, and
it's a family business. They had a couple different locations. And
I personally, this came on my radar, like because we have two brands. We've got Big Will Burger and we've got Zambries. So Zambries use Tutti.
Right.
I won't say it. Well, I will say why we didn't use Tutti at Big Will Burger. One was a function of the time, having too many apps, and it's too busy to monitor at the store level.
Yep.
But the other one was, and it kind of speaks to ACO, which was another local delivery service that started years before its time. And I've always, I've been an active interest in business, and those type of business models, they don't even work on an international level. Like none of these delivery apps are making any money. They're hoping to make money. They're trying to build scale. They probably are profitable in like New York or Miami or like communities that have a lot of density. So they've got drivers, they've got access. It doesn't take forever. Then you got the volume. You can't build a business like that in BC. You just can't. Like in Victoria. And ACO found that out, I believe, when they tried to do that, and they were doing a ghost kitchen with 4 different concepts, and it just doesn't work on scale because if you're taking 10%, just imagine how much money it takes to run a business like that, where you're having to pay drivers, you're sharing your revenue with the drivers effectively, and 90%, like Tutti, I think was 10 or 12 or 14% or something, and you're 90% of your revenue, if it's 10%, 90% of the money that comes in, because the money goes directly to Tutti, and then they pay 90% back to the restaurants. Like imagine, think about a small business in Canada where we have to pay, if you have provincial and federal tax, so you're paying 12%. So you have to collect that money. That's hard enough.
It's hard enough
It's hard enough to collect
12%
and actually have it in the bank to pay it.
That
right?
thought was just going through my head.
So imagine the reverse of that, having to collect 88%, and having to pay that weekly to the stores. So your operations, so you have an operational budget,
Right.
and then you have your segregated funds. And this is the way you do it in business, is you need to segregate those funds. So you just take out the 10 or 12%, whatever your fee is. Say it's 15%. You take that and you put it in your operating account. Those are the funds you use to run your business, including paying drivers and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So if you just put 100% in your operating budget, and then it's like a Ponzi. And it's the
That's
same.
how it felt reading all the articles over the weekend.
And that's why I'm like, it's generous. Sure, I'm compassionate. I've had business that I started over the years that have failed. We were involved in the guild and we lost, a small fortune there. Things happen in business where you could have all the best intentions and it doesn't work out. But when you've got a business model that is clearly flawed from the get-go,
and you perpetuate
it,
yeah.
and then you don't take the proper, business management of the funds, then you're compounding that, and then you do become a Ponzi because like Tutti should have known or ought to have known that they were failing 2 or 3 years ago when they stopped. Maybe it was a year and a half ago when they stopped making their regular payments. Right. And it was a coincidence that it combined with their expansion, like to Kelowna and Vancouver and these other markets. Like, come on.
Right.
Like, you don't have to be a business genius to see the writing on the wall. And meanwhile, they're literally spending restaurants' money. Like, it's not their money.
Hard-earned, low margin money.
And going back to the government and tax thing, like, when you get behind with the government, they don't mess around. And there have been, in my business career, I've gotten behind with payments and GST and whatnot. And they tell you point blank, are you an idiot? Like, why are you not segregating these funds?
Yeah.
Right. And they're exactly right. They're not operating income. Like, it's not operating income. You shouldn't be putting in the same bank account. Right. But I mean, people do.
Yep. They do, because it's just
when you look at the size of the fund, like the size of the amount of money, like so going back, I just want to talk a little bit about my guilt around it.
Sure.
And I think part of the reason why so many people got so far behind with collecting the money or raising the flag sooner was you're dealing with, unprecedented food costs rising and inflation, labor crisis, with getting employees, and also the amount of money that you have to pay to employ people correctly, which is something that should be done. I mean, employees should be getting paid, as much as you can, a living wage at a minimum. Yeah. So those are challenges that we would have to sort out anyways. But when don't have your eye and ball in your accounts, and all of a sudden you realize, because that happened to us. So I talked to my mom, who's our bookkeeper. I'm like, and she's like, hey, Tutti hasn't paid us in 3 months. And I'm like, what? Holy crap. And for me, because I already had the thought that it was not a sustainable business, you think I would be like on them right away too. And I was for the first couple of years. I was like, it's Tutti paying, it's Tutti paying, it's Tutti paying. And they were always like, yep, everything's good. And then all of a sudden, when it's not good, we're 4 months in and they owed us $9,000. So my GM just got on the horn and so we would have been probably one of the early ones to go, and we ended up getting paid over about a month and a half.
Okay.
So, but in my responsibility as, a community, view as a community leader in this area, I should have raised the flag. Like, I should have shouted from the rooftops for people to be aware and stop using them or start collecting them or whatever. But those dots didn't connect for me right away until all of a sudden now on their thread, I think it was 2 weeks ago, somebody mentioned it on our Slack channel on Bread and Butter, like, hey, right. Tutti, have you been paid? Have you been paid? And I'm just like, holy crap. So we were lucky enough to get paid, but it's Ponzi because, I feel guilty that we got paid when others haven't. You know what I mean?
Well, and it makes it hard to raise a flag against someone who you want to have faith
Well, you don't
in.
want to butcher
you
their business either.
Yeah,
you know?
you want to have faith in the local business trying to help local companies get their product out. And that's what it felt like. And felt like to go against that model, it didn't feel
it was
right.
icky.
Yeah.
It's icky. Like, I don't like looking
at it. And now
at
it's even more icky, though.
Oh,
now.
it's way more icky because you just look
disgusting.
at these people, and these are friends of ours, you know, like these businesses that are affected by this are friends of ours.
Right.
And we had an incident with DoorDash where somebody hacked my email, and they actually switched all of our banking information to deposit all of the money into their fake Royal Bank Big Will account.
Oh, really?
So we got notification of the bank being changed. We called DoorDash like instantly and said, do not deposit the money into any accounts. Like, just hold it. So this was the day, I think it was the day before the deposits would be made. And for sure, the early morning of the deposits that would have been going out that night.
Wow.
So they stopped everything, but they didn't get one of the accounts. So think about it. So they didn't get one of the deposits. It was $12,000. So that, even, you know, like, we're very busy and we have good cash flow and things like that. Like, that is, like, because the margins are so tight, 12 grand just not being delivered. And we're still kind of fighting with them to figure out if insurance will cover it or whatever. And this was like 6 months ago, or no, sorry, 4 months ago. And just that. So 12. So imagine if we lost the 9, that'd be 21,000. Like, this is where you start.
Quick.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden you can't pay your taxes, and the tax person comes up, or you can't make your payroll, or you can't make your rent, or you can't pay for your food, or, I mean, the seriousness of this can't be understated. Like, it's crazy.
Is there talk about how this is going to get solved? If they're going to have to dissolve and pay everyone back, or is it going to go through courts?
Well, typically what happens is, and this is the thing that concerned me, is that when you start being able to stop making your commitments, you can't prioritize the people you owe money to. So whatever you have as money or assets, you have to pay equal distribution amongst all your creditors. So once you hit bankruptcy, that is a for sure. Like, anything they have as assets, my guess is they're not going to have a lot of assets. Like, they've basically been probably funding their business and paying their drivers, and not paying their drivers because their drivers aren't paid either. So it's a disaster. It's not like unless it was a Ponzi and they actually took the money and bought real estate, or the guy bought a Lamborghini or something.
Right.
So
never going to see that money.
You're never going to see the money again, right? And
smoke.
By that time, like, JJ Wonton Noodle House, like, I heard that they were closed. So that to me would be devastating. And this is like an institution in Victoria.
Absolutely. So good.
Yeah, and to see that, so you talk about wanting to support a local business in Tutti, and, you know, they're a cause of at least one, but my suspicion would be significantly more restaurants will be, you know, closed most likely as a result of this.
Wow. Well, I take back anything I may have said that's positive about Tutti. I think the only reason I was saying anything positive about them is because my initial thoughts are always positive and they're always supportive. But as soon as you're right, and I should have quantified my comments.
No, that's fine.
As soon as there was nefarious holding back of the funds, which you can definitely see that. As soon as that happens, I've got no compassion.
Well, I think it's fine to be compassionate. Obviously, we need more information. We don't know. I've made statements, and I was interviewed by Capital Daily on Friday, and I made a statement about a Ponzi scheme. So I have no evidence or no basis for that statement. I just did it in context to either a bad business model where you didn't segregate the fund, or nefarious behavior, which would be Ponzi.
Yeah.
Right? So those are the only two outcomes. Like, they could have all the good intentions that they wanted, but they set it up wrong.
Yeah.
And they've basically failed, not only themselves, but they've now failed and will lead to closures of other businesses that just wanted to support a local business. And that, to me, is where you know, my issue is. And, you know, even if it's just that part of it, That's not right either. Like, it's not okay for you just to run your business into the ground and then take, a whole bunch of other businesses with you.
Yes.
There's always, listen, I'm not naive to the fact that businesses do fail, and sometimes with best intentions. And I don't want to beat up anybody with the best intentions. I prioritize my fellow restaurateurs because it is such a hard business to be in. And
I was thinking about that kind of on the weekend about how it influences the business folk, but then I was thinking, well, how does that influence the customer too? I mean, the customer is the one who has paid the money to TD for the food that they've eaten, and they must feel really taken advantage of because they paid in good faith.
Yeah, 100%.
They entered into a contract with TV as well.
Yeah,
I'll give you money, you bring me food. I mean,
there's 4 people involved in this. There's the restaurant, there's the customers,
right?
There's the driver, and there's Tutti, right? So 3 of the 4 people acted in good faith, right? So Tutti, unless they were, while their business was going, actively trying to raise funds, right, to try to build up the cash flow so they can actually pay what their commitments are, then, but they should have shut down their business long before that they got into this level of destruction.
Yeah, because it's obviously wasn't
they would have
sustainable.
known. Listen, they would have known months before that their cash was drying up. And even that they're doing it, they're like, why are they using restaurant funds to operate their business?
Right.
It just doesn't, it's wrong. Right. So I don't have a lot of sympathy.
No, I don't either really.
Yeah.
And there's this other company in Victoria that I won't mention right now, but I have the same concerns about them. And I'll tell you when the mic's off, but I
want to light it on fire. But we also don't want to be.
I don't want to be wrong either,
exactly.
and light someone up on fire who doesn't deserve to be on fire.
No, and there needs to be some sympathy, and it's not. Listen, I've done a lot of businesses in my career, and there's times and situations where you just get behind the 8 ball, and there's not a lot you can do. But what I care about is the intention after.
Yeah, it's like how do you handle yourself when you're in that situation? How do you react?
Well,
that's a big thing, right?
It is a big thing, but ultimately, if you're not nefarious, then you cut it off as soon as you possibly can, so that the damage isn't deeper.
You know how hard that is because you keep thinking that, I'm
going
to turn it around. I'm going to turn it around.
This will happen.
This is just a bad month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But unless you're operating a business that has humongous margins, like, I don't know, the oil business or, something like that.
Business.
Yeah. Or you own Amazon where you have the complete supply chain tied up and you can decide what you charge and what your costs are and all that kind of stuff. You're actually not acting in good faith because you know what your margins are. Like the margins in delivery businesses are negative, right? Like if you're only charging 10 or 15%, your actual margins are non-existent. You're hoping to build up enough volume, but if you don't have enough working capital to do it, the writing's on the wall. And if you're continuing your business down that road, as you're drying up cash and all that, and you're stretching out your receivables and your payables, or not your receivables, but your payables, and all of a sudden you don't have enough working capital, now you're dipping into the restaurant's money, you know what you're doing is wrong.
Right. Yeah.
So, like, if it starts happening, then you can just be like, oh, shoot, what an idiot. This was a bad business model, or I didn't raise enough money, or whatever. Then you just say, sorry, guys, I got to shut this down. But I'm sure they were paying all themselves, right?
Yeah.
Throughout the whole thing. So, I don't know.
It certainly has affected quite a few of the bread and butter collective.
Of course.
members.
And, we start again in September with our meetings. And, obviously this will be front and center to how we can help and support those businesses affected. Because I'm telling you, like $4,000 or $5,000 in a business is, their rent.
$200,000.
$200,000 is like I can't even get my head around that number.
I can't either.
And I think Cliff and from Agrius and Filippi, I think theirs were at like $40,000, I believe.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
So maybe it's less, maybe it's more. I don't know. But he was in the Times Colin was talking about it, and it's just another blow on top of the blows and the
Yeah,
blows,
we
which is
just
come on.
don't need any more.
No,
We just
no.
need,
Well, and that's why we
a
need to
break.
strengthen our organizations so that we can absorb this stuff. This stuff happens. Like, let's be real.
Yeah.
Like, we're not naive to think that, some people aren't going to go under, just like the mysterious one you brought up, like that aren't doing what they should be doing or living up to their commitments. And it's usually a writing on the wall that things are spiraling. So the quicker that they can nip it in the bud and do it for everybody, not just for themselves. Like, imagine you're running off a cliff. Like, you're going to be going with the ship too. Like, why not try to save your suppliers and the people you've relied on, and yourself. So just cut off the losses quicker, unless there's a clear path, right?
When COVID hit, and I won't say much about this. When COVID hit, the first thing I did was paid off every supplier.
Yeah, smart.
And
Yeah.
after that, just let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah.
But it was really important to me
Yeah.
to pay every penny that I owed
Yeah.
to everybody.
Yeah.
Get that out of the way. And then I felt that it doesn't really matter. At least I don't owe anything to
Yeah,
anyone.
that's right.
And let it just happen.
Yeah.
And it did. And
Yeah.
It worked out okay.
Yeah.
Right? And
Yeah.
I think taking care of people around you is one of the most important things.
For
and
sure.
It feels like that's really what Tutti didn't do.
Yeah. No, and it's, I used to have a import business where I imported products from Asia and sold to Walmarts and Costco's and Home Depots and Canada Safeway and whatnot. And I got out of that business because of the way not only did those big box stores treat me, it forces you to treat others the same way. Otherwise, it's a supply chain, right? So I morally didn't like how I felt in the morning but in the business sense, they were acting in the best interest of their business, I guess, but there's no more morality around that. Well, the tough discussion, but that is it for this special episode. We've got season 3 coming up, which should be launching in September. Hopefully we'll be talking about more issues that are more positive than this 2D discussion.
Absolutely. There's so much good to talk about. Hopefully this will all be water under the bridge by September.
Well, and hopefully there'll be some good outcomes, and Bread and Butter Collective will be there for our member businesses, and we're going to help them any way we can. And it's a sad state of affairs, but onward and upward, and looking forward to season 3.
Yeah, well, thanks for being here to talk about this very timely issue today.
Absolutely. Be kind.
Be real nice.
Cheers.
Bread and Butter Collective's membership includes the following local businesses: 2% Jazz, 900 Degrees Wood-Fired Pizzeria, Agrius, Big Wheel Burger, Blue Mountain Solutions, Bodega Tapas Wine Bar, Brentwood Bay Village Emporium, Nourish and Charlotte the Quail, Victoria Chocolate and Company, Drum Roaster Coffee, Habit Coffee, Foo Asian Street Food, the Culinary Arts Program at Camosun, Cafe Fantastico, Fall Epi, Harold Street Brewworks, Hey Happy, House of Botang, Hoyne Brewing, Jetty Marie's Cracker Company, La Pasta, La Rue Patisserie, Mocha House, Part and Parcel, Poco a Pinto Bar, Pizzeria Prima Strada, Rain Dogs, Roast, Table 9 Consulting, Sherwood Cafe and Bar, Sweets by Selena, The Collective Wine Bar and Kitchen, The Drake, Tapa Bar, Taco Stand Al Pastor, Took, The Whole Beast, The Wienery, and Zambries.
To hear more from the Bread and Butter Collective, go to checknews.ca/podcasts on Check Plus, or find us on your favorite podcasting platform.